quick video introduction to Mentat. I've been building this since March. It's sort of getting to the point where it's kind of useful. So I thought I'd just show what it was and see what people thought. So basically, here we have a workspace. This workspace is called System. System comes out of the box with Mentat. And it contains a bunch of things, and things have this sort of familiar card metaphor. So we've got a bunch of different things. We can move them around, and we can change their size, and so forth. The user interface is still a bit ropey, but it's kind of good enough to get started with. So what is a thing? So a thing is basically a bunch of attributes. Attributes have a name, and they're sort of loosely namespaced here. So we've got thing and view as namespaces for attributes like created, name, note, and so forth. Name is a string, and in this case it contains thing, and you can see it's printed on the card. Note is a text. Text are markdown strings, and you can see that's being rendered in the card as well. And the reason it's rendering the thing note is because presenter basically says use thing note for the front of the card. If I go look at another thing, so if we go look at task, for example, and we pop the Explorer on task, you can see task adds a couple of new attributes, task script and task title. It's got some attributes that are also in thing, and then it's got these two here which are in bold and basically say their prototype is thing. So basically if I look at this task as a prototype of thing, whenever you have a prototype, any attribute in the prototype that's not defined in the thing itself will be inherited. And we can actually add multiple prototypes, so you can inherit attributes from different things to solve problems. So this is task. So a problem I have is generating a set of cards that I lay out in Adobe InDesign. And instead of creating each of the cards separately, I have kind of a template for the front and a template for the back. And then I use InDesign's data merge to take the data from a CSV file and use it to kind of generate the 24 cards in the set. That's great, but managing those cards in a CSV file is a pain. I couldn't really find a good way of working in either things like Evernote or Scrivener or Tinderbox. So that was one of the drivers for this, was kind of I run into these sort of data problems, and I've never had a tool that really solved them the way I wanted to solve them. So I'm going to create a new local workspace. In the future, you'll hopefully be able to create remote workspaces, which can be sort of publish and subscribe things, but more about that later. So I create a new workspace for cards. If I go in here, I can select that. And I'm going to create a new thing. So I've got a new thing. And if I come in here, its prototype is thing, and you can see it's got some attributes that inherits from thing. And I'm going to change the name of this to card prototype. Okay, so here's my card prototype, and I'm going to add some attributes. These broadly correspond to what's going to be in my CSV file. So card label, that's going to go in there. I'm going to make that string. Card image. Now I could make card image an image type, and although it doesn't look like it, I could actually drag an image file on here and Mentat would manage it, but because of the way the CSV file works, I'm just going to make this a string as well, because it's dealing with just a set of small images that are all in the same folder. So card pillar, which is the strategic pillar, archetype, and then the last one I'm going to add is card statement. And I'm going to make that text. Okay. So I've added some attributes that kind of model the data that's going to go on one of my cards. And so here I've got my prototype, and oh, actually, if I make this a template, now I could, for example, go new card prototype, and I could start typing in sort of what's my card and customizing the fields in here. But given that I already have a CSV file, that will be a bit of a waste of time. So how can I get the data that I've already got into Mentat in the first place? So I'm going to move this down a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new import task. And you can see import task has a prototype of my import task has a prototype of import task, and if I go look at that, import task has a prototype of task, and basically, so it's just a way of expressing different kind of tasks. If I go look at the task script, so here's where I think this app gets interesting. So a script is basically a JavaScript function. All scripting in Mentat is essentially just writing a JavaScript function. Import tasks are a function that get passed two arguments. They get passed the task itself and a list of files, and then the task script can really do whatever it likes. And Mentat has a growing API that allows you to do quite a bit. So that's the default import task script. So if I just go grab a file now, so I've got my CSV file, I'm just going to drag it onto Mentat. So drag it on here, and you see what happens is it pops up this dialog. So whenever you drop a file onto a workspace or drop files onto a workspace, it pops up this import dialog, and it's asking which task I want to use to import. Well, I only have one import task, so it's going to pick that one. And this is the file I dropped, and I click import files, and it says you dropped one files on me. Not super interesting, but essentially that's what this task script was written to do. Show alert, you dropped a certain number of files on me. So from this we can build something a little bit more useful. So if I go back and edit this now, and I add a script I wrote earlier, and I do that operation again, so I grab my CSV file and I drag it here, and it says trying to report, and oh, I forgot something. So in my import task, I'm going to add an attribute called card prototype, and I'm going to make it a ref type. Ref types basically are a way of pointing at other things. So card prototype is an attribute which will point at card prototype, which is the thing over here. I think at some point I'll let you kind of drag and drop to make those kind of associations, but for now it's enough just to see here that we've got card prototype as a ref attribute that points at card prototype. So if I drag that on again now, and I say import those files, boom, imported 24 rows, and you can see we've got a bunch of cards. However, not terribly useful. We've imported 24 rows, but if I go in here and I change the view presenter, and this is a pretty crap way of doing things, but it's just a very quick way of me getting the ability to customize the card front. I'll figure out some better way later. So I'm going to customize this attribute. Now, for there's something I haven't sort of fixed yet, essentially, that doesn't auto-update. But if I just switch and switch back, what you'll see now is that we've got, what did I say? Oh, I did card label twice. I meant to do card label, card pillar, and card statement. And if we switch back, I will fix this fairly soon. Okay, so now what you can see is I've actually pulled data in from the CSV file to create a set of cards. And I could now go in and over time manage this. I can add different cards, I can change the statement. So this gives me a nice convenient way of managing the data that I want to use. But now the data's in Mentat, what do I do if I want to use it in InDesign? That requires a CSV file, and that's now out of date with the change that I've made. So now what I can do is create an export task. And much like an import task, an export task allows you to export things to other formats. So if I pop open the Explorer for here, you can see we can add, I can say where I want the file to go, and in this case here, and I can specify I want the format to be CSV, and again I can write a script. Now this script, if I were to run it, doesn't do very much. So if I now pop open the export dialog, so this is the built-in exporter, and I go cards and I select card prototype. So I'm saying I want to export anything that descends from card prototype, and here you can see we've got 24 cards. And basically, because this is the only export task in this workspace, it's picked automatically, and I click export. And now if I open up cards new, so here's cards new.csv file. Well, obviously it's not actually a CSV file. You can say it's just the string that's in the script. But again, if I reopen this and I edit the task script and I grab a script I wrote earlier and I rerun the export, so I say I want to export card prototype using export 1. Okay, and now I open cards new again. You can see here that we have output a new CSV file in a form that's ready to go right into InDesign. So, so that's a simple example of something I can do. I took some data out of a CSV file, I turned it into a set of cards based on a prototype. I'm able to then edit this, and obviously I've got structured information here, so I can have multiple different text fields. So for example, what if I wanted to add a quotation to this, which I might well do. So I might have a new field called card quotation, and this is a text in here, and I can now go in and I can sort of manage that field separately, and I can have a separate editor. I don't have to kind of have headings in a text file and try and mess about with stuff like that. So I've got nice structured data, but actually another problem I have is I've got effectively a database of quotations, which is a note in Evernote, which is a really horrible way of doing things. So how else might I do this? So what if I created a new workspace and I call it quotes? Okay, so I've now got a new workspace, and so I go to quotes and I create a new thing, and I call it quote prototype. Okay, so I've created this, and I'm going to have, let's say I'm going to have quote author, which is a string, and I'm going to have quote text, which is a text, and that'll do for now. So and I'm going to change the presenter for this to be quote author quote text, and so you can see now my quote prototype, and if I make this a template so it's easy to create new ones, and I can create now a new quote prototype, and I can add a quotation in here. So let's call this DNA1, and I'm going to improve how you edit stuff. I mean, again, this is all sort of pretty rough and ready. Okay, so I'm going to add a quotation here. I'll just copy something in. Okay, so here's a quotation by somebody I like. So there's my first quotation, and let's add another quotation. And again, I could write an import script that would parse my text file and pull in a whole bunch of quotes, but I'm not going to do that right now. Let's create another one, and we'll change the author. Now you might wonder, why don't I use the note attribute for the quote text? I mean, there's no particular advantage to using it, but it's there. Why wouldn't I use it? And the main reason is you can only inherit any given attribute from one prototype. So what I'm about to do, so I've created a couple of quotes here. So I go back to my cards, and basically what I can now do is I can open this card, and I can say I want to give it a prototype, and I'm going to add DNA1 as a prototype. So what this means now is if we look at this, you'll see this is now picking up quote author and quote text from that particular thing. So it has a prototype of card prototype, and it also has a prototype of quotes DNA1. And obviously I could write a script to sort of assign random quotations. I could add attributes for tagging my quotation, for example, and say, okay, the pillar for this is strategy, so add a random strategy quote, that kind of stuff. Because you can only get one field from any given prototype, so this is getting thing note from thing, but it's getting quote text from here. If I had two different things I wanted to inherit from that both had a note text field, a thing note field, I can only get one of them. So by separating out the data in this way, it makes it easy for me to sort of mix and match different sort of data. So now I could export, by changing my export script, if I wanted to. So if I change this script, and I could add a new so by adding quote text like this, and hopefully a bit of live coding doesn't go horribly wrong. So again, if I run the export now, and I say I want to export cards, card prototype, and I click export, and I pick up my CSV new again. So now if I look at my newly generated quotes file, I've just, if there isn't a quote, I've just put in ... but we can see here that it's now generated the quote in here, and so we could add a new field into InDesign and export the contents of the quote field onto the card face. So that's kind of a quick tour of Mentat where it is right now. So you have the ability to kind of create things, add attributes of different kinds, and there's a whole different kind of sort of set of attributes, import data, and that could be from CSV files or really anything that you could write sort of an import script for. You can write scripts to change the card, so we could write a script that would tag these, for example, with random quotes, and then you can write export tasks. So that about wraps up what I've got to show you right now. I hope this has been interesting. I'm planning to release the app probably next month. Thanks for watching.